This presentation is intended for the designated DBS form and identity checkers in RYA affiliated or recognised organisations. I hope it will help you to submit fully and accurately completed forms first time and save any delay in the issue of disclosure certificates to your applicants. Welcome to the presentation. The aim of this presentation is to help people who are responsible in our RYA affiliated clubs and recognised training centres for checking DBS forms and identity documents to complete the forms fully and accurately so that the process works much more quickly and smoothly and the applicant receives their disclosure certificate as quickly as possible. Starting with the front page of the form, before you even open it, just make absolutely sure that the reference number at the top right hand corner starts with F01. If it starts with F00, put it straight in the bin. It was discontinued in 2014 and cannot be submitted. Still on the front page, a lot of people don't bother to read all this writing because it's so small, but there is actually some really useful and important information there. So the main instructions are that the form must be completed in black ink so that the DBS's scanning equipment can read it, and in capital letters. We have noticed recently that particularly younger applicants who tend to communicate via text don't seem to understand what block capitals are, and they fill their form in lowercase. So please try to encourage them to fill it in capitals and not in any colour other than black. If they or you make a mistake, it's not a disaster. Just cross it through as neatly as possible and write the correct information as near as possible to the original box. If you cross the wrong box by mistake, just put a line through it, cross the correct box and put a circle round that box to show that that's the one you meant. As I just mentioned, it is fine to cross something out and correct it, but don't try to make the form look tidy by using either correction fluid or Tipp-Ex or sticking a white label over the mistake. The DBS will then reject it straight away, so we can't submit it. Right, so if you open up the form and look at the left-hand inside page, the first section requires the applicant to state their name. This sounds very straightforward, but a surprising number of applicants fail to include their middle name, and that must appear on the form. So when you check their identity documents, make sure that the names on the form match the names on their birth certificate or their passport, and if they've missed off a middle name, write it on the form. If the applicant has ever been known officially, not as a nickname, by another name, for example because they were adopted or they've got married or they've changed their name by deed poll, they need to provide a full continuous sequence showing each successive name with to and from dates in month and year format. The only exception is that you don't need to show a birth name if you have been adopted before the age of 10. So applicants in that situation can just provide their adoptive name. If the applicant has reverted to using a previous name at any point, that needs to be repeated with dates every time. They must also repeat their forenames every time, even if they haven't changed. If someone is using two different surnames at the same time, for example, a woman who is married but uses her maiden name for professional purposes, she should include both names, one as her current name, and that's the one that will appear on her certificate, and one as a previous name with the to date shown as the current month and year in which she is signing the form. If an applicant is transgender, there is a special sensitive applications line, the number's on the slide, and applicants can call for advice on what to put on the form. Right, if you now open the form, on the inside left-hand page, the first section requires the applicant to state their name. It sounds very straightforward, but a surprising number of applicants fail to include their middle name. So when you check their identity documents, make sure the names on the form match the names on their birth certificate or passport. If the applicant has ever been known officially, not as a nickname, by some other name, for example because they were adopted or they've got married or they've changed their name by deed poll, they need to provide a full continuous sequence showing each successive name with to and from dates in month and year format. The only exception is they don't need to show their birth name if they were adopted before the age of 10. They can just provide their adoptive name. If the applicant has reverted to using a previous name at any point, that needs to be repeated with dates. And they must also repeat their forenames every time, even if they haven't changed. If someone is using two different surnames at the same time, for example, a woman who is married but uses her maiden name for professional purposes, she should include both names, one as her current name, which will be the one that appears on the certificate, and one as a previous name, with the to date shown as the month and year in which she is completing and signing the form. The DBS can provide advice to transgender applicants about completing the form, and they should call the sensitive applications number line, which is on the slide. Moving down the form, underneath their date of birth and their gender, the applicant needs to state the town and country of their birth. That should be as shown on their birth certificate or their passport. And please make sure they've read country correctly, because sometimes people misread it as county and they put Yorkshire or Kent or something like that. So it needs to be the country of their birth. Moving down the form, underneath their date of birth and their gender, the applicant needs to state the town and country of their birth. Make sure they have read that as country, because quite often people read county and put Yorkshire or Kent. The country of their birth should be shown. All applicants should have a national insurance number, which must be included on the form, unless they're a non-UK citizen who isn't either employed or receiving a pension or benefits or paying tax here. So pretty much everyone will have a national insurance number. If they don't think they've got one, or if they haven't received it yet or they can't find it, they can obtain it from the Department for Work and Pensions. And if you click on the link on the slide, that'll give you their contact details. If the applicant holds a UK driving licence, and that includes a provisional licence, they must include the licence number on the form. Check that the name on the licence matches where they've stated their names further up on the form, and that they have included their middle name. Sometimes it's the other way round, particularly with older licences, so they do have a middle name, they've included it in A3, but it's not on their driving licence. That's probably simply because when they were filling in their application for their original driving licence, they didn't include their middle name, and in those days the DVLA didn't cross-check with other official documents such as passports. So if there isn't a middle name but there should be, include a note with the form, and we've then got a standard letter that we can send to the DBS to explain the discrepancy. Otherwise they'll send the form back querying it. This slide shows how all UK driving licence numbers are put together, unless the licence has been issued in Northern Ireland, where they just consist of numbers. You can see that after the scrambled date of birth digits, there are either two initials and a 9, or one initial and 99. So if you know the applicant has a middle name, but there's only one initial and 99, and their middle name clearly then doesn't appear on their driving licence, we will need to know which documents you have seen the middle name on, and we can then include a letter to the DBS to explain the discrepancy on the driving licence. The applicant's nationality and the country of issue of their passport must be included, even if it's a UK passport. Sometimes people just put the passport number, but then they forget to put the other details. The country of issue on a UK passport doesn't actually appear as UK on the passport itself. It'll either say UKPA or IPS on newer passports. The DBS will accept either of these or UK on the form. If the applicant has put their nationality as Welsh or Scottish instead of British, that's okay, that will still be accepted. But they need to put the country where the passport was issued. The applicant's nationality and the country of issue of their passport must be included on the form. Sometimes UK citizens forget to put that on and they just put the number, but they do need to have both the nationality and the country of issue on there. The country of issue on a UK passport doesn't actually say UK. It'll either say UKPA or IPS on newer passports. The DBS will accept either of these or UK, and even if the applicant has put Welsh and Wales or Scottish and Scotland instead of British and UK, that will still be accepted. This is part of the form that often gets forgotten, but it really must be completed. you are checking the identity documents on behalf of the RYA, which is the registered body. So you need to cross the boxes in the box headed registered body use only on our behalf. You don't have to see every single document listed, but you must confirm that you have verified the applicant's title, surname, forenames and date of birth, and you must fulfil the DBS's requirements which have been agreed with the Home Office. This is a legislative requirement that we provide sufficient proof of identity. There's more information on slides 21 to 24 at the end of the presentation and also in our printed guidance. The rules differ depending on the applicant's nationality. So most of your applicants in an RYA club or training centre will be able to satisfy the Route 1 requirements. If they can't, or if you're at all unsure whether you are complying with the law or not, please call the RYA on 023 80 604 104 and we can go through the process and work out whether you can comply or not. Moving across to the right-hand page, the applicant needs to provide their current address, which is the one the DBS will send their disclosure certificate to, and all other addresses where they have lived for the past 5 years. You need to verify a document showing their current address and cross the registered body use only box to confirm that you've done this. And please make sure that the addresses are continuous and they go back at least 5 years. If the applicant's current address doesn't go back at least 5 years, they need to put their previous addresses in section C. And if they run out of space there, they can download a continuation sheet from the DBS website as shown on the slide and finish the address history off there. It's okay if the addresses overlap. So, for example, a student might put their parents' address as their current permanent address and the date when they first moved there, which might be when they were born, and then they can have a sequence of term time addresses, and there might be gaps when they went home for the summer, but that doesn't matter as long as at least one of the addresses goes back the full 5-year period. However, if they lived somewhere else during a vacation or during a gap year, more than just a short holiday, they should include any of those addresses. The reason for this is the DBS will ask the police forces in every area where the applicant has lived to disclose information that might be relevant to their position with your organisation, even if it didn't actually result in a conviction or caution. The applicant needs to cross the relevant box in E55 and sign and date the form. Don't hold on to a completed form for too long because we must countersign it at the RYA and send it off to the DBS within 90 days of the applicant's signature. So don't penalise the people who are quick at filling in their forms by waiting for the stragglers to finish theirs. The reason for the time limit is that the applicant's personal details might change, so they might move house or their passport might expire and they might renew with a different number. So it needs to be current information on the form. Now we turn to the back page of the form, which is the section that tends to cause the most issues for the form checkers. Firstly, if you're absolutely certain that you have checked sufficient evidence of identity in line with the DBS's guidance, write your name in W58 and cross yes in W59. Section X61 has 2 lines. In the first line, you need to state the workforce for which the check is being done. In other words, the vulnerable group that the applicant works with. Please remember you should only include adult workforce if the applicant regularly teaches, trains or supervises vulnerable adults. You can't legally ask for a check against the adult workforce if they just might work with a vulnerable adult or if they only do it very occasionally. In the second line, put a description of the applicant's role that will enable the staff at the DBS and the police to understand how the role involves regularly teaching, training or supervising either children or vulnerable adults or both. They'll understand generic titles like instructor or coach, they are obviously teaching and training, but they won't necessarily understand titles that are specific to a sailing club or a training centre. So rather than put the name of the person's job, it is better to put a description such as supervising children. You don't need to put volunteer and use up precious letters because that's covered further down in X68. The next section has 4 questions, but you only need to make one decision, and that's in X64. In X63, the level of check will always be enhanced because the reason for your requesting a check is that the applicant will either be working with children or with vulnerable adults, and enhanced is the appropriate level. The DBS has advised us that X65 should always be no, because none of our positions involve providing personal care to adults under the DBS definition, which is intended to cover care work and healthcare roles. X66 is always no, because none of our roles take place in the applicant's home. So you just need to decide in X64, firstly, does the applicant teach, train or supervise children frequently enough to be eligible for a check of the children's barred list in addition to the enhanced disclosure? This means they do it at least once a week or 4 times in a 30-day period or overnight, and they do it without being directly supervised by someone in a senior role who has also been checked. So bear in mind that whilst an instructor might be supervising an assistant instructor, it's probably unlikely that a senior instructor will be directly supervising an instructor at all times on the water. Having a child's parent on site doesn't count as supervision. It has to be someone who is in a senior role to the person applying. If the answer to both of these questions is yes, you can cross the yes box to request a check of the children's barred list. If the answer to either of these questions is no, we cannot legally request that level of check and you must cross no, but we can still request an enhanced disclosure in X63. X67 is fairly self-explanatory. You just need to confirm whether the applicant is new, which means they're not yet doing the role, or existing, which means they're already doing the role but haven't yet been checked, or they were checked some time ago and you're requesting a recheck. And finally, you just need to state in X68 whether the applicant's role is voluntary under the DBS definition. If you cross no, there is a fee of £44 payable to the RYA, and we pass all of that on to the DBS. So that's it. Please don't sign or date section Y. That's where a registered person from the RYA signs. And you can now submit the form. The next 4 slides contain a summary of the identity checking requirements and the list of acceptable identity documents. If there's anything you're not sure about, it's better to contact us at the RYA before sending the form off. If we receive incorrect or incomplete forms, we have to send them back to you, which costs all of us time and money in postage. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation.